Welcome to Making Sense, the Guest Spotlight. My name is Alison Blackler and I have had the privilege of talking to some fantastic guests over recent times. You can hear their interviews here. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so I am here with Sean Orford, who I've known for many, many years, and I'm delighted to have him here with us on Making Sense. And hopefully we can share and shed some light on how to manage ourselves when things are quite difficult. So welcome, Sean. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Sean. I am a psychotherapist. I've been in practice since the 1970s. Oh my God. I had a whole career as a consultant in the NHS, which I've actually retired from, but actually got busier than when I was doing that. My main thing is enabling people to find the calmness inside themselves that allows them to manifest who they are. And we are so silly as human beings. I keep saying to everybody, if we could all just look after each other, we'd all be okay. And it's so simple that most people's needs could be met fairly easily. And we look at what's going on around the world at the moment, whether it's the wars or the hunger, the starving, the homeless. And it's like if we could all just look after each other a bit more, the world would be different. So one of my things in life is about trying to encourage people to do that.
Yeah.
People will say to me, I can't thank you enough for that work that we've done. It's been really, really helpful. I don't know how I could ever pay you back. And what I say is the way you could pay me back is to go and do what we've been doing with other people.
Yeah.
Let's spread it.
Spread the love.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Brilliant. So we know that there are, as we said, there are a lot of people out there at the moment who are finding life, what else is happening in the world, quite challenging. And yes, it is. But I'm interested in helping people be able to kind of understand, firstly, what's happening. So I know, Sean, you can probably explain that beautifully. And then for us to come up with a few ideas and strategies that people will be able to try to be able to help themselves, because I'm seeing people who did have some anxiety. We've all got anxiety, but that's gone up and up and up, and they're really finding it quite difficult to manage. So how would you explain it to them, Sean?
Two things, I guess. It's the issue about being in the present. It's like in the present there are never any problems. The problems come when we keep reviewing unresolved stuff from the past and living that in the present, or we keep projecting forward into a future and we start to imagine things. So, traditionally, reviewing the past creates depression, and projecting into the future creates anxiety, both of which we start living in the present. In reality, going over the past can create anxiety as well.
True.
It's not just depression. So that a lot of what's going on at the moment, it's like people say to me, well, I can remember when inflation used to be, and I can't remember, I think it was back in the 70s, it was silly inflation of 15% of them. When you've been through that and you've come out the other side and that's the past, you know that these things move. It's like watching a river, it all just gradually moves in the end. The problem is that when we're fixated on it, it feels like it's going to be there forever. And it's like when you look at the Ukrainian situation at the moment, and if we look backwards at the past, people start talking about Hitler and Nazis and fascism. If we project forward to the future, it's like, are we going to have a nuclear war? So I'm going to press a button. Okay. Yeah. Whereas actually, in this moment, you and I are sat in two rooms talking to each other. Yeah. And the problems aren't there unless we bring them into the room. And that doesn't take away the problems. They're there and they're real, and we may have to deal with them more than we're dealing with them now.
Sure.
But we need to be where we are, be in the moment.
Be in the moment. And it is something that's so simple, and yet we all do find it quite hard to do.
Yeah. And the process about meditation. Meditation is one of those words that I don't really like using, because it has so many connotations of a man in a loincloth sat under a banyan tree going, "Arr." And it's not like that. To meditate means just to be. I mean, the word sati is the Pali word for meditation. Sati just means to remember. And what you're remembering is to be where you are. Stop letting your mind wander off, bring it back.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, because I hear people say, "Oh, I've tried meditation and it didn't work for me." And I think just in itself, remembering that meditation or mindfulness is the practice of just bringing your attention back to whatever it is that you are following on the guided meditation, or if it's just your breath. But so many people think, "Oh, I can't do it because my mind keeps drifting." Yeah, that's the point. The point is bringing it back, isn't it?
Well, I was in Doha in Qatar, and they were building these massive tower blocks, and they had steel frames. Now, the guys that worked on those steel frames, I'm sure they were breaking all kinds of health and safety rules, but they would be, I don't know, 300 feet up in the air, walking along a steel beam that was maybe 9 inches across, and they'd just be walking across it to, doing whatever they were doing. And I was watching them, and it was quite windy this day, and these guys, they're kind of wobbling a bit, but walking across and doing what they want to do. And I'm thinking, those guys are actually living in their moment. You got to know where your feet are. You got to know where everything is, because if your mind wanders off somewhere else to what's for tea or whatever, you can be gone off the tower and you'll be dead.
Wow. That just shows, you can almost use that, as you say, as a visual metaphor for life. If you're not just focusing on the steps that you're making, on the plank that you're walking on, then you could drop off and fall off.
Yeah. Or if you think of like someone using a high-powered electric tool, it's like if they take their mind off what they're doing. I mean, one of the things about when you work in the NHS is there's different seasons in A&E. And you get things like, it's now log cutting, because people are coming in with kind of scars on their faces where saws have bounced back and all kinds of stuff, and it's because they took their mind off of where they were for just a moment.
Yeah. Powerful, so powerful. What I'd like to just chat about, Sean, is what happens for people in that association around when something is happening externally that is quite difficult for them to manage, that actually is out of their control. And just that idea, I think we talked about before we came to record, about the difference between empathy and sympathy. And I think you've got a good way of helping people understand that.
Well, the way that I came to this was listening to people talking, and people say, "Oh, I'm really empathetic, or empathic." And I'm thinking, no, you're not. What's going on here? And the difference is that when you're sympathetic, you vibrate in a resonance with something else. So when I play my sitar, I've got the strings on the top and the sympathetic strings are underneath. Now, you don't pluck those, but when I pluck one of the top strings, the sympathetic strings vibrate in sympathy.
Right.
Yeah. And so the same with the opera singer that goes, "Wah!" and then the chandelier rattles. Yeah, it's a sympathetic vibration. Now, if if I'm watching a movie, or I'm watching the news or whatever's going on, and I start to have a sympathetic vibration, what's going on is I'm starting to resonate internally with stuff that is unresolved, which may go back to when I'm tiny or whatever. I may even have lost the memory of what it is. But if I find that things start to upset me, then that's a sign where you need to go and talk to somebody. You need a bit of therapy. You need to understand what that sympathetic vibration is. Yeah. The difference is that with empathy, you can feel it, but you don't own it. So if you're being empathic with somebody, you can feel their pain. But when you finish with them, you can allow them to keep their pain and you can go home and have your tea. Yeah. When you have a sympathetic vibration, you're rattling all over the place and you go home and you can't go to sleep.
I think it's so important for us to remember that, though, isn't it? For all the things that are happening around the world, how it is affecting us all and how it affects us all differently. And your description there just gives us a little bit of meat on the bone, so to speak, because it reminds us that maybe there is something. If it really is bothering you, if you're really feeling anxious around what you're watching, then maybe it is a little sign that there's something in there that needs exploring.
Yeah. The meat on the bone is a good metaphor, because the bone, the skeleton, if you like, is a solid structure, and that's cognitive memory. Now, lots of things happen to us in life that give us cognitive memory. The bit that connects us to that memory is the emotion, which is the meat on the bones. Yeah, and that's where all the tension is and everything else. And what happens, I've done it a lot with guys that have been in active service, and they've got post-trauma, is that you've got this, the memory is kicking off and creating that post-traumatic response. But if you can turn the volume of the emotion down, in the end, the person can review the memory without it kicking off. Yeah. And that's when you know that you've resolved something, because you watch a movie where the storyline previously would have upset you, and suddenly you're observing it and you can feel it, but it isn't taking you over the edge.
Brilliant. It's so helpful for people to understand this. Yeah. So go on.
No, go on.
I was just going to move us on and think, have we got, I know you've got some great little techniques that help people when they are feeling that empathy, or that sympathy, I should say.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to suggest is that as a part of the toolkit that goes with all this, is that we put in things like, I use several recordings for people across the NHS and across different factories and businesses. And the first one is a morning focus. Now, when you wake up first thing in the morning, most people don't think, wow, it's another day in paradise as they leap from the bed. Most people wake up and think, oh my God, not again. Ooh. Yeah. Now, the thing is that if you want to change that negative head, if you can do a morning focus, you can create a positive script, positive storyline for the day to go and live. Yeah. And equally so, at the end of the day, you can have the evening review, where you go back through the day and you dump all the stuff that you don't want. Yeah. Now, I know these recordings work. I've been using them for years, but a couple of years ago, there was a nurse in one of the hospitals here who had been doing the evening review. So what she would do, she'd finish a shift, go and sit in the car park, do a 5-minute, it's just a 5 minutes evening review, leave everything at work so she could go home clean. You know? Fine. Next day she goes into work and a colleague says, why didn't you help my mother? And she says, why? What did I do? And she said, my mother collapsed in front of your car and you didn't even move. And apparently she was there doing her evening review, nice and relaxed. The mother had collapsed and had to be whipped off into A&E, and she didn't even notice.
Oh dear, what's the chances of that?
They do work.
They do work. Good. So we pause in the morning and we think about what we'd like, our intentions for the day, and then we check in at night and just review how the day's gone, what we're letting go of, what are we keeping, etc. Nice.
Think about how many groups of people go into work first day of the week, usually a Monday, and it's the classic conversation. Oh my God, I bloody hate it here. And we get all that negative reinforcement. Then someone says, oh, don't worry, it won't be long, it'll be Friday. So you're wishing away every week of your life.
Yeah.
And then people say, I say, so you've only got Saturday and Sunday. And they look at me and they start to feel a bit, and then it's, well, if I'm honest, Sunday's a bit dodgy because I'm winding up for Monday. And it's like, what on earth are we doing?
Yeah, it's a culture, isn't it, that we can fall into a trap, definitely.
Yeah.
So I think setting your intention in the morning, spending that little bit of time and then reviewing the day and noticing, I think for me, what I think is most powerful about what you're saying is to just let go of some of the things that haven't worked that day. things that didn't go so well, just so that you're not taking them on and taking them into the rest of your day.
Yeah, and that's what the evening review is about. If you're in a high pressure situation like the NHS guys are working with, that if you can do it in the car park before you go home, actually leave it there.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's the thing. We bring it home, don't we? And we wind ourselves up talking about it with our families, etc. And I think there is something about just helping people, encouraging people to do exactly that, being able to process it there and then.
Yeah. Powerful phrases in modern psychology are thoughts become things. Yeah. The things you think about, you bring about. Yeah. So if you spend your whole life focusing on, oh my God, guess how you're going to feel?
Yeah.
You know, it's inevitable, isn't it? And sometimes you've got to fake it to make it. I mean, I say to people, wake up in the morning, go to the bathroom mirror, look yourself in the eye, smile and say, who loves you, baby? Yeah? And people say to me, I can't even look in the mirror. What do you mean? And then some people say, I look in the mirror and I go, nah, I can't do that. And then someone else looks in the mirror and says, all right, I love you. And the voice in the head goes, you're a bloody liar. You know what I mean? So it's like that kind of negative repetition that we get used to doing. Because one thing about British culture, if someone comes in and says, actually, I'm really good, I like me, I'm fine, people get arrogant.
Yes, isn't it funny?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting that some of the clients I've worked with over the years, you know, one of their goals is to feel more confident, but they're often a fear of, well, I won't become arrogant, will I, if I start saying that I'm good and I'm happy and I'm okay? And it's so interesting, isn't it, how people fear becoming arrogant, and yet actually all you're doing is saying, yeah, I'm good, I'm okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a joke now, the places I go to, because people say, oh, hi, Sean, how are you? And I usually say things like, oh, I'm absolutely stunning, or I'm really amazing. And people laugh. Yeah. Now that's okay because we're raising mood.
Sure.
Yeah. But why would I want to come in and say, oh no, life's terrible. Oh, I've just stubbed my toe again. Oh, you know.
Yeah.
But let's look at the positive. I mean, when you stub your toe, do you think, oh, thank you, universe, for giving me this lesson to look out where I'm putting my feet? Or do you go, oh no? Ah.
Yeah, exactly.
What do we do with it?
And those language patterns and structures are all the time being picked up by the mind and being processed in a certain way. I don't know about you, Sean, but I find it interesting when so many British people, particularly when you ask them how they are, they will say that they're not bad.
Yeah, or the favourite is fine. I'm fine.
I'm fine.
Now, in psychology, that we now agree that fine is FINE, which is effing insincere with no emotion. I'm fine, you know. And then it's like, okay, how are you really?
Exactly. So I think it's just people being more aware, isn't it, of their language, of the impact of their emotions, and then, like you say, being able to just do some pausing, whether that be in the morning and in the evening, if possible, and just be able to think about what's actually happened rather than the fear of what might happen, which is another trap that people fall into, or overthinking what has happened.
Yeah.
All good, and all very much living in the present, which is obviously your strap line, your business strap line. Where can people find you, Sean, if they wanted to look you up?
liveinthepresent.co.uk is the easiest. One of the things I have to say as a positive is that one thing I've noticed over COVID is the amount of men who have come to me and opened up in ways that they didn't before. It was always like, you know, the woman would be fine, sharing emotion, but trying to get emotion out of the guy was like getting blood out of a stone. But I've got guys who are actually being honest about how they feel.
Nice.
And a lot of that has been fear-based, as in people that have had COVID and it scared them, you know, because they couldn't breathe or whatever.
Yeah, sure. I've seen the similar. I've seen a lot more men coming forward in the last few years, actually. And businesses also really recognising the need for their people to have a place to come and explore how they're feeling, how they're connecting with each other, etc. So that is all very positive.
Yeah.
You and I have been at this party for some time waiting for everyone else. And
yes, calm down. Yeah.
Everyone's here with us. Brilliant. Yeah. Okay, so just before we finish, Sean, give us one little nugget of something else that you can share with everyone, maybe that might help.
I think it's summed up in the phrase, what you think about, you bring about. Lovely. Yeah, it's like you have to be attentive to what's going on in your mind, but what comes out of your mouth. If you say a negative out of your mouth, like you stub your toe and you go, oh, you bloody idiot, to yourself, not only do you say it, but you hear it. So you just reinforce something, you just created a cycle. Whereas if you can stub your toe and go, thank you, universe, for giving me this lesson, then that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think that, and I think that the other phrase, which still makes me laugh, because I do some work with the Americans, and one a couple of years ago, there was some stuff going on in one of the units, and one of the Brits was saying to one of the Yanks, no, we had problems on the line. And the Yank went, whoa, just hold it there, son, hold it there, son. We don't have problems in this organization. We have learning opportunities. Yeah. And I think that when you first hear it, you laugh. You think, oh, that's just typical American kind of thing. But when you actually live it, which they do, because it's like, if something goes wrong in one of the factories, it's a person error, it's a system error, it's a process error. If we sort it out, it won't happen again. That's good. We've learned something. Yeah. Right? Now, in the good old NHS, God bless them, if something goes wrong, everyone's ducking and diving to get out of the way before it hits the fan, because someone's going to be to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not looking at what can we learn. We're looking at who can we punish.
Yeah.
And that's a real sadness for me.
Yeah, I agree. And you see that within families, within relationships as well, where instead of looking at what is being presented, as in, this is why it didn't work. And I'm a big fan of people looking for those gems, those bits of development that can really, really help you move forward. And instead of that, people are blaming everybody else, blaming someone else. And it is a trap, isn't it, to fall into?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much, Sean, for coming on and having a chat. Lovely to see you.
Yeah, lovely to see you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.